Los Angeles, 1946. Elizabeth Short, known by her friends as Beth, arrived in the City of Angels with a head full of dreams and a heart set on stardom. The sun-drenched streets and glamour of Hollywood had seduced her, just as they had so many other young women before her. But unlike the rest, Beth had something different, an allure, a mystique that drew people in, and a darkness she kept hidden beneath her dazzling smile. She had grown up in Massachusetts, but the bright lights of Hollywood had always called to her. Determined to leave her past behind, she had embraced a life of auditions, late-night parties, and relationships that often ended in heartbreak. Despite her hardships, Beth had remained optimistic. She believed her big break was just around the corner. One evening, at a high-profile party in the Hollywood Hills, Beth met Michael Corrigan, a rising film director with an intense gaze and a reputation for charming the most elusive of women. He was older, sophisticated, and dangerous. Everything Beth knew she should avoid, yet couldn't resist. Their connection was immediate, and soon, they found themselves caught up in a passionate affair, one that would ultimately lead them both down a path of betrayal and death. Michael was married, though unhappily, to a woman who was well-connected in the industry. Despite his professed love for Beth, their relationship was kept a secret. Beth, already familiar with rejection, convinced herself that Michael would leave his wife for her. As months passed, though, the promises of a future together began to feel more like lies. By the end of 1946, things took a darker turn. Beth had started receiving strange phone calls and letters. At first, they were anonymous messages of admiration, but soon they escalated into more sinister threats. She confided in Michael, but he dismissed her concerns, telling her it was just a part of the Hollywood scene. Jealous actresses or obsessed fans. Beth tried to believe him, but the sense of unease that had settled over her life only grew. In early January 1947, Beth disappeared for several days. She had been seen around town, at bars, restaurants, and with various men, but no one could say where she had gone. Michael grew frantic, but his hands were tied. His position in the industry and his marriage prevented him from looking for her openly. Then, on January 15th, 1947, the unthinkable happened. Elizabeth Short's mutilated body was discovered in an empty lot in Limer Park. Her body had been cut in half at the waist, drained of blood, and her face slashed into a grotesque smile. The brutality of the murder sent shockwaves through Los Angeles and the nation. The media, quick to sensationalize, dubbed her the Black Dahlia, after the 1946 film The Blue Dahlia. Her death became an immediate headline, overshadowing every other story. Michael was devastated, though he couldn't reveal the depth of his grief. Privately, he had loved her, perhaps more deeply than he had loved anyone before, but publicly, he couldn't be associated with her now. His career and reputation were at stake. So, he mourned in silence, watching as the police investigation spiraled out of control. The detectives assigned to the case, led by Sergeant Joe Kendrick, faced a media frenzy like never before. False leads, conflicting testimonies, and wild theories plagued their every move. The tabloids painted Beth as a promiscuous young woman, turning her tragedy into a lurid spectacle. But Kendrick saw through the rumors. He believed that the answer to Beth's murder lay within her personal life, specifically her relationships. Michael became a person of interest in the investigation, though he was never formally accused. His alibi was solid, and he had powerful connections that kept him out of the spotlight. However, Sergeant Kendrick wasn't convinced of his innocence. There was something in Michael's eyes, a flicker of guilt that Kendrick couldn't ignore. Meanwhile, Beth's closest friend, Jane Richards, was reeling from the loss. She had been Beth's confidant, the only person who truly knew the depths of her despair. In the weeks leading up to her death, Beth had told Jane about Michael, about the affair, the broken promises, and the threats. Jane had urged her to leave him, to start over somewhere far from Los Angeles, but Beth had refused. "He'll come through for me," she had said. He loves me. Determined to find justice for her friend, Jane began her own investigation. She knew that the police were overwhelmed, chasing shadows and half-truths. If she could find out who had been threatening Beth, maybe she could find her killer. Jane's search led her deep into Hollywood's underbelly, a world of shady producers, corrupt police officers, and desperate women willing to do anything for a shot at fame. The more she uncovered, the more convinced she became that Beth had known too much about something, or someone, and that knowledge had gotten her killed. As Jane dug deeper, she began to notice she was being followed. At first, it was subtle, glimpses of a car in her rearview mirror or a figure watching from a distance. But soon, the intimidation became more direct. Anonymous calls, threatening letters, and strange men showing up at her apartment in the dead of night. Jane realized that she had gotten too close to the truth. In a final, desperate move, Jane confronted Michael. She found him in his office late one evening, surrounded by scripts and photographs of glamorous starlets. He looked tired, older than she remembered. When she accused him of being involved in Beth's death, he didn't deny knowing her, but he denied any involvement in the murder. She was a beautiful, broken soul, Michael said, his voice heavy with emotion. I loved her, but I didn't kill her. Jane wasn't satisfied. She pushed him, demanding answers. Michael's composure cracked, and in a moment of vulnerability, he revealed that Beth had been blackmailing a powerful figure in Hollywood, someone with enough influence to ruin lives. Beth had known too much, and her refusal to stay silent had sealed her fate. Before Jane could process the revelation, the door to Michael's office burst open. Two men, dressed in dark suits, grabbed her. Michael tried to intervene, but it was too late. The men dragged Jane into the night, leaving Michael standing in the shadows, powerless to stop what was happening. Jane was never seen again. The murder of Elizabeth Short, the Black Dahlia, remained unsolved. Theories and speculations continued to swirl, but the truth was buried deep within the corrupt heart of Hollywood. Michael, haunted by guilt and loss, continued his career, but the memory of Beth and Jane never left him. Years later, as he stood on the red carpet at the premiere of his latest film, Michael looked out at the flashing cameras and glamorous faces. The fame, the power, the illusion of it all, it had cost him everything. And as the lights of Hollywood sparkled around him, he realized that no amount of success could ever wash away the blood on his hands.